Hello everybody, my name is Tom and I'm about to talk to you about Formula 1 Fantasy. Today I'm going to be talking about using the wildcard. I'm going to give my opinion on using the wildcard now, this week, in the lead up to the Australian Grand Prix. Talk about some of the pros, some of the cons, what I'm personally doing or what I've personally already done and potentially locked myself into doing, and just kind of go over some of the reasons why I am or am not going to be wildcarding. So whilst I talk about this, we're going to have a quick look. This is my team for Australia at the moment. I've already made a couple of changes, preempting the fact that I'm probably wildcarding, but I don't know yet. Still kind of iffy. But yeah, we'll have a quick look at what wildcarding is and how we can utilize it. So we have a quick look down here in the subs bank. So yeah, normally you're allowed up to 3 substitutions each week, which you probably know about. But if we go down to the wildcard, it allows you up to 12 substitutions for free. So quadruples your number of substitutions you can use for free, and you can use these substitutions to maximize the value. So as you can see, an example here that the website provides is swapping out Gasly, and then so you buy Gasly in for 13 million, his price goes up. It's never going to go up by 2 million, but it goes up in this example by 2 million, and then you remove him for someone else, and that 2 million gets locked into your budget. So by switching in and out of drivers, like buying, just an example, buying Leclerc, selling Perez, and then buying Haas, selling Ferrari, whatever, depending on how the market is changing, you can then lock in extra value to your team. And then if we go back to my teams, and then you can gain, if we go in here to manage, you can see down the bottom right here, the team value, which enables you to basically buy better drivers in theory, although there's quite a lot of drivers offering good value, so you might not necessarily need the money right now, but it could, locking in that money now can help you later on in the season. So you can see my team at the moment is currently worth 102.9. If we quickly go back to my Park Ferme team, which I'm not actually changing at all, it's locked in at 101.7. So I've already made over $1 million more just by switching people in and out and growing the budget that way. But the wildcard basically magnifies that, what you can do with gaining that value. So using the wildcard in Formula 1 Fantasy is quite different to other fantasy games. So because you can already make 3 substitutions in your team per week, and you've only got 6 slots anyway, so you can literally change half your team each race week as it is. So when you're using the wildcard, you're not really using it to make the perfect team, you're really using it to make up the value. Like I say, you get the 12 substitutions. So what I've done already is I've already made 2 substitutions. If I do end up wildcarding, which I'm currently likely to do, I would say, I'll discuss why in a minute, but I can make a further 10 substitutions for free, so I can keep hopping on and off of drivers depending on whose value is going up. So you can see these little green bars under the drivers that tells you if you hover over it. So for example, Perez is currently on 92% of the way to a price increase, which is why I swapped out Verstappen for Perez earlier on, to try and jump on that train basically and hope Perez does go up by 0.1, and then lock in that value for the next race. Just keep hopping on and off of drivers over the next sort of 2 weeks until the next race begins. Now there are, like I say, advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons as to whether you want a wildcard now. So in theory, it's more optimal to use the wildcard kind of now rather than waiting further down the season, because most of the people that play the fantasy game, there's currently 1.3 million people playing or have teams set up in the game. So out of 1.3 million people, a lot of those people are going to basically forget to change their teams. They're going to lose interest over the coming weeks, and they won't be making transfers, and therefore, in theory, the number of transfers and substitutions, whatever you want to call them, is going to be reduced, and therefore the price changes are going to be slower. So you want to try and maximize the fact that more people are going to be currently engaged in F1 fantasy as opposed to in a few weeks or months down the line. So you want to try and utilize the fact that there will be masses of people changing and pushing the market in different directions early on in the season. As you get further on down the season, you get more of what I'd call ghost teams, where people literally just kind of forget to change their team or lose interest in the game, and they just sit there vegetating, and like my Park Ferme team, it's just going to sit here and do nothing basically for the rest of the season, because that's what I've chosen to do with the team. Just want to see how well it does. But people will be doing that with their main team because they'll just genuinely forget basically. So early on in the season is generally best, in order to get the maximum sort of value out of using the wildcard. It's kind of good in a way to get over and done with as well, because I'm not gonna lie, it's a pain. It's a real pain to try and keep on top of the sentiment changes and everything. Keep an eye on these little green bars and that. There is a website I'll quickly flick over to, which is called f1fantasytracker.com. It's a really good website. It gives you different stats and things to do with the F1 fantasy stuff. And up here, if you click on sentiments, it takes you to... Oh, it's just automatically refreshed. It takes you to this page, which gives you a almost entirely up to date like list of how the drivers are doing, like how close they are to increase in percentage. So rather than hovering over going into the app, which is a real pain to get into, and it's slow, and the app is a bit of a joke, to be honest. So yeah, use the website to gauge that, and you can also flick over to constructors, and you can see who's likely to increase or decrease. You can see currently, this is one of the cons of doing the wildcard at the moment. There's a lot of constructors which are dropping, as you can see, and only really has, and Red Bull rose this morning, so there's not really much in the way of gaining much in the way of constructors at the moment. Drivers at the moment, a lot of people already have the likes of Perez and Sainz and Leclerc already in their team, so although they are on the rise, and I do anticipate that they will probably go up by at least like a point or two by the time the Australian race comes along. It's going to be kind of slow because everyone kind of knows what the best team is at the moment. Everyone knows that Ferrari and Red Bulls are kind of where you want to be. People are starting to catch on to Ocon, so his price has risen quite a lot recently and is still on the rise fairly steadily. So I'm fairly confident that Ocon's going to rise again by at least another point or 2 million. So if you haven't already got Ocon and you want to bring him in just for value, then that could be a reason why you want to use the wildcard to bring an Ocon. For some reason, Guan Yu Zhou is also rising, even though he didn't have a very good race in Saudi Arabia. But so yeah, and also, like I say, there's lots of people dropping in value. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see that the people that are rising are people that already kind of you're probably going to have in your team already, mostly like generally speaking. So it could be a benefit to hold the wild card until later on in the season, when the Ferraris and the Red Bulls have a really bad race and people will want to jump off them, and maybe the Mercedes have got over their numerous issues and the Mercedes are suddenly much more competitive, and people want to jump onto the Mercedes, and all of a sudden the prices in the driver market are going up and down all of a sudden, and that could be an optimal time to use the wild card. At the moment, it's a little bit sluggish, not going to lie. Also, another interesting thing, if we go back here and have a look in gameplay, we can have a look at exactly how many wildcards are active at the moment. If we scroll down, you can see that there's currently here 636 people have activated their wildcard going into Australia. 636 people out of 1.3 million people. That's a really, really, really tiny percentage of people that have actually activated the wildcard currently. And the way to benefit the most out of getting the wildcard is for as many people as possible to be using the wildcard at the same time. Because obviously the more people are using the wildcard, the more they're going to be wanting the prices to change, and the more they'll be making substitutions. You can see last week only 6,000 people in Saudi Arabia. I think this is mainly due to the fact that the sentiment and price changes didn't happen for several days after the Grand Prix, and then all of a sudden they jumped up by like 0.3 million or whatever. So we didn't really have a chance to play the market. So I don't think people really utilised it in Saudi Arabia, which is fair enough. But it's interesting that only 636 people, as of the time of recording this, are using the wildcard. So that kind of puts me off a little bit using the wildcard. But like I say, I kind of preempted, if we go back to my team, I kind of preempted that I was going to use the wildcard, and I've already made 2 substitutions. I've ditched Ferrari for Red Bull because they were rising last night and they've already gone up. I've ditched Verstappen for Perez because he's on the rise, which means I only actually have 1 free substitution left already for Australia, which is almost certainly going to be Red Bull to Ferrari, because Ferrari are on qualifying and race streak. We're going into the next race, so you really want Ferrari next week, or 2 weeks time, whenever. So that in that case, I would be locked in to this is my team basically with Ferrari if I don't wildcard. So I may have like tripped myself up a little bit and getting a bit overexcited and using the wildcard. But I still think I can probably squeeze out somewhere between 0.7 and like 1 million in value which may or may not be very easy to do later on in the season. So I think I can safely say I can get 0.7 to a million. I've already gained 0.1 off the Red Bull. I'm probably going to gain this extra 0.1 off Perez. So that's 0.2 in the bank from the wildcard. And then hopping on and off, Sainz is on the rise. You can see Sainz here is already 80% of the way. So Sainz is probably going to rise in the next week or so. So I can swap out like Ocon for Sainz or whoever, or maybe Perez because he's already going to rise, and then I can swap Perez for Sainz. So basically over the next week, I can probably guarantee myself 0.3 or 0.4. And then as Australia weekend actually comes up, there's going to be a lot more, again, fluctuation in who is being bought, who's being sold, according to what happens in the practice sessions. So I think I can then gain another probably 0.4, 0.5 million. This is just me sort of rough estimate. So if we add that all together, I can probably make somewhere up to a million, which is absolutely fine for me. Like if you want to like wait for more on that value, then fine. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with going for the wild card. And then just bear in mind if you do use the wild card, make sure you remember you only got 12 substitutions, so make sure you've got enough substitutions at the end of all your trading to make sure you've actually got the team that you want going into Australia. So I'm probably going to be making up to like 7 or 8 leading into the weekend, and then I want to make sure I have at least 3 or 4 substitutions to get back to the optimal team for the weekend, because the game isn't just about gaining money. You want the points, obviously, but using the wildcard this week could enable me later on enable me to get those points that I'm after by getting the better drivers. One more thing I will say, just in case you are thinking of wildcarding, if we have a quick look at the Australian Grand Prix itself. I'm from the UK, so these times are all UK, so you have to work out relative to where you live as to what times they are. Look at the times of the practice sessions, in particular the qualifying. So the qualifying for me is going to start at 7 a.m. So the deadline is 7 a.m. on that Saturday morning. So I'm going to have to be up really early, which is fine by me. I can get up early in order to sort out my team before qualifying. But are more casual people, and that's quite a lot of people casually playing this game, are they going to be up that early just to change their fantasy team? Not necessarily. So there may be fewer price changes going into qualifying than there would be on a normal weekend, because it's really early in the morning. If you're in America, for example, this time probably translates to about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd imagine, depending on where in America you are. Maybe in the rest of Europe, which will be a bit later on, it'll be 8 or 9 o'clock for some parts of Europe, so it won't be too bad. But that is a slight concern, that the market won't change as much as normal due to the fact of the timings of it being in Australia. Kind of an interesting one to keep on top of. Obviously, practice 1 and practice 2 are still happening on the Friday, so we'll still have that Friday, Saturday before, where the market will be changing. And I'm confident that based off this, I can get enough price changes to make the wildcard work this week. So like I say, I'm kind of leaning towards using the wildcard, and I may have already locked myself into using the wildcard by the 2 changes I've already made, but that's my prerogative. I'll be interested to know what everyone thinks about using the wildcard this sort of fortnight leading into Australia. I feel like in this video I've talked more about what the cons and disadvantages are rather than what the pros and advantages are of using the wildcard. So maybe after watching this you may be leaning away from using the wildcard, but I personally kind of just want to get over and done with, gain that as much value as I can, and just kind of forget about it and then focus on optimizing my team going forward. But yeah, that's pretty much the end of it. That's me finished rambling for however long this video's gone on. I apologize if I have waffled. But yeah, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter for further updates, and I'll be doing another video this week looking back on the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and looking ahead to Australia in terms of fantasy. I'll be updating my spreadsheet, and we'll be looking at some certain trends and the points per million and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video, which should be coming out very soon. Okay, thanks very much everybody. Good luck if you are wildcarding. Good luck if you're not. Bye bye. drivers.